My wife stole our daughter's college money to fund her shopping addiction and wants me to take the blame. I've been with my wife Andrea for 8 years now. She has a 17-year-old daughter named Cassie, who I also love dearly. She is a very brilliant young woman. Recognizing her academic potential, me and Andrea decided to put together a college fund for Cassie so she wouldn't be crushed by debt. Over the years, it has amounted to over $200,000. Cassie is aware of this and is banking on it since she's trying to get into the Ivy League. To make a long story short, last week, I found out that almost $170,000 of the money was missing from the account. I freaked the F out and asked Andrea if she knew anything about it. She teared up and said that she had been spending the money over the years to fund her spending habit. I was furious, but I had a moment of clarity. I asked Andrea if she was having an affair and using the money to fund it. She adamantly denied it and offered any proof I needed. Social media accounts, emails, her work phone, everything. She offered to show me the receipts as well. There was nothing that popped out as suspicious, and the math from the receipts added up as well, so I let it go. But we still had the major problem of the money being gone. She described herself as a shopping addict, and the money from Cassie's account was just too tempting not to use. She didn't make excuses, but offered no solutions. As stated before, I was beyond furious. She ruined Cassie's chances at going to college debt-free and has changed the trajectory of her whole life. I had asked her to stay with her sister while I tried to figure this out. Cassie was concerned about why she was leaving, but we just said we needed a little bit of space. I asked Andrea to come back home yesterday and we had an extremely long discussion about how to handle this. She stopped me from talking and asked a favor of me. She asked if I could take the fall for her and tell Cassie I took the money and spent it. She asked this because her and Cassie don't get along for a variety of reasons, and knowing how independent Cassie is, she will probably leave right after college if not during. However, me and Cassie get along very well and she comes to me for a lot of her issues. Andrea thinks Cassie is more likely to forgive me. I told her that before we even talk about that, she needed to acknowledge her mistake and own it. She needed to go to individual therapy, we needed couples counseling, she needed to find a shopaholic support group and that I would be controlling the finances from now on. She said those terms were steep but fair. I said she needed to tell Cassie what she did, apologize and hope for the best. She refused and said she could never lose Cassie. She said I could survive the mistake, but she couldn't. I told her that in order to even consider me taking the fall, she needs to agree to my terms. I don't know what the hell to do. The last thing I want to do is lie to Cassie, but I don't want Andrea and Cassie to split up forever. And the worst part about this whole thing is that Cassie's life is ruined either way. And I don't know how to replenish the money other than maybe borrowing from my 401k. My wife stole our daughter's college money to fund her shopping addiction and wants me to take the blame. I realize that I am a doormat, and hence I won't be staying with Andrea. She's lied and manipulated me and Cassie for far too long for me to stay with her. The fact that she stole from me, Cassie and Cassie's grandparents makes this as close to unforgivable as it gets. The most wronged party here is Cassie. She has an amazing future ahead of her and I refuse to let her future go to waste because my wife made such selfish choices. I also found out some disturbing things about the money as well as my wife's greed and selfishness. So, over half the money in the account came from Cassie's grandparents, also known as Andrea's parents due to blackmail on Andrea's end, as well as Cassie's bio dad's parents, and my parents whom she also calls grandparents. This money came in the beginning, which is why I knew how much was supposed to be in there. Also, I never handled the account. Although I claim Cassie as my daughter, she is only my stepdaughter officially. As such, her mother handles all financial matters related to her. I simply gave her money to put in the account, and she showed me the, probably doctored, statements. My belief is that she pocketed the cash whenever I gave her money. However, I did notice all the stuff she was buying. She claimed that they were either on sale or because she got a work bonus. She makes a very good living, and I thought she was responsible with money so I said alright. I did ask her why she needed so many Christian Louboutin shoes, and she shrugged it off. And although people can't wrap their heads around it, it's very easy to spend $170,000. The most disgusting part is that a large chunk of the money went to buy a Mercedes, which I thought was a lease. She had a 7-year-old Lexus that according to her, her friends were laughing at. Keeping up appearances for her wealthy friends is very important to her. Also, Cassie and Andrea do not get along for a variety of reasons. Allegedly Cassie takes a lot after her deceased father and Andrea can't relate to her at all, or maybe doesn't try hard enough. Cassie much prefers me to talk to. We have parent and child boundaries, but Cassie considers me one of her best friends, her words, not mine. I also realized taking the fall was her manipulating me, plus it would have opened me up to a crap ton of consequences that I don't need to deal with. Plus honesty is always the best policy. I will be talking to Cassie tonight. Update 2. My wife stole our daughter's college money to fund her shopping addiction and wants me to take the blame. So I talked to my wife Andrea deep into the night. She went back and forth with me on admitting to Cassie what she did. She said that she or even both of us could get loans and take care of the money then. I said she had a problem and she needed to make amends, which was a talking point from here. When I threatened her with divorce she agreed to tell her so long as I don't divorce her. I guess she's afraid of losing everything. That afternoon we sat Cassie down and told her the facts. She thought we were just kidding at first, but when she realized we weren't kidding she got extremely upset. She and Andrea got into an extremely loud and vicious shouting match. Cassie called her some truly awful names and Andrea, while she didn't curse at her, tried to defend herself but started getting angry at the names she was being called. They were so loud, the neighbors called the police. Cassie told Andrea that she never wanted to speak to her again, and that she never wanted a dime of her money and stormed off. I asked Andrea at this point to stay with her sister indefinitely while we give Cassie some space. She didn't want to go, she fought me to stay, but I told her me and Cassie needed time apart from her. So she packed her stuff and went to her sister's house. As for Cassie, she went to her room and locked the door. She let me in after I told her that her mother had left. She cried in my arms and expressed that her future was now ruined. I told her it wasn't, that I would cover her college from my retirement, and that I would make it right. She doesn't exactly know what a 401k is yet, but she told me that she doesn't want me to work until I'm 90 like the people at Walmart just because of her. I just told her she's worth it, and that you do stupid things for the people you love. She said that she would start looking for scholarships and maybe other schools, where she could get a full ride since she has excellent grades and extracurriculars. I then admitted Andrea wanted me to take the fall for her and that I had considered it, but I came to my senses. She got upset with me and told me that would have been the stupidest thing I could have done. She said she wouldn't have believed I did it anyway, and it only would have made her more upset at her mother. She told me that she doesn't blame me and that she's not mad at me for the money being gone, but she is mad that I'd want to cover for her mother. I apologized for that. We talked and cuddled for a while longer before calling it a night. The next morning I get a call from Andrea's parents asking if the story was true. Cassie had told them the story and they were calling to confirm. I had the voice recordings and bank statement to prove it. They were livid, but begged me not to leave Andrea for this, and to try and help her through her addiction. I told them I wasn't sure about that yet and hung up. A while later my parents called and asked me about it. I confirmed. They were probably more mad than Cassie was, all things considered. They're threatening to press charges. I told them to calm down and that I would handle it. Cassie is doing okay, she's still a little shell-shocked, but she seems to be taking it as well as one could hope for. I made her pancakes this morning and that seemed to brighten her mood a bit. I asked her if she wants to do therapy. She said she'll think about it. I will be doing therapy for myself. Andrea has been calling to talk, but I'm just letting it ring, so she's leaving voicemail. She's offering anything to make it right, money, sex, favors, you name it. But it's not going to work. Update 3, my wife stole our daughter's college money to fund her shopping addiction and wants me to take the blame. Well, me and Andrea are legally separated and currently in divorce mediation. Unfortunately, Andrea is still very much in denial and is trying everything she can to get me back, including delaying the divorce as much as possible so that we can work on our marriage and even using Cassie as a tool to get her ways. She claims that she's begun seeing a therapist who's helped her see the problem she has and has gotten her on the path to recovery. I don't know if I buy it, but I told her it's a good thing if it's true. She has also apologized to my parents, hers and her late husband's parents, for what she's done and offered to pay back the money. They've all forgiven her, but are keeping her at an arm's length. She's been desperate to reconnect with Cassie, but Cassie has kept her word and decided to never speak to her mother again, or at least until she's ready to. Andrea's wealthy friends she was so desperate to impress have been around our house offering their help. They offered everything from a shoulder to cry on, to baked goods to spa dates. I only ever really took them up on the baked goods because I will never turn down homemade lemon bars and oatmeal raisin cookies. Cassie did take them up on spa dates, so there's that. One woman in particular, Susan, has been around more often than the others. While I feel like the other friends were prying for information, she seemed more genuine and just there to help me and Cassie heal. She cooked meals for us, helped around the house and just spent a lot of quality time with me in particular. We didn't ask, want or need her to do any of this for us, but she did it out of the kindness of her heart and I really appreciate it. We've gotten a lot closer in such a short time, and I truly consider her a friend. I did sleep with her once though, so maybe that will progress into something. It's actually amazing I could get along with someone who's so much younger than me. Usually I have a hard time connecting with younger people, even if they're adults. But now we get to the most important part of this update, Cassie. As a cheer-up Christmas gift I took her and one of her friends to Montreal last month to see her favorite artist Billie Eilish at this festival. She loved it, and Montreal is such a beautiful city to visit. All in all, she took the loss of her college fund pretty well. Cassie is a very hard-working person, and she put her nose to the grindstone trying to find a scholarship. Unfortunately she missed the cutoff for most of the scholarships she could have qualified for, but the school of her choice is giving her a very generous financial aid package. In addition, she qualified for some local grants so she got her entire first year covered. And yes, Cassie did thankfully get into her school of choice. In fact, she had many acceptance letters and full ride offers, but she had her heart set on her school of choice. In fact, I dropped her off last week. I'm extremely proud of her and I know she'll do well. I'm an empty nester now, all alone in this big house, and the silence is deafening, but Susan has been around to keep me company and I've taken up bike riding as a hobby. So all in all, things are okay, not great, but certainly better than before.
Am I the asshole for yelling at my brother during his daughter's funeral? Story time. So, my brother married his high school sweetheart about 10 years ago, but she sadly passed away during childbirth shortly after. He just never recovered from any of this. So because of all of this, he fell into drug addiction, gambling addiction, alcohol addiction, all the addiction, and he became unable to take care of his daughter, who we will call Amy. So since he was unable to take care of Amy, me and my husband took care of her. She came to live with us. She was only about 4 months old when we took her in. Don't get me wrong, we really wanted my brother Steve to be a part of Amy's life, but I'm not gonna lie, he was normally too high to have any clue what was going on. My parents put this guy through rehab so many times, but he relapsed all the time. So we were the ones that saw her first steps, we bought her first bike, we took her to school for the first day. So when Amy was 7, she was diagnosed with stage 3 leukemia. No treatment was too far away, nothing was too expensive. We were willing to try literally everything to get this girl better. And for a short while, all of this treatment worked, but when she turned 8, she relapsed. And this time, it was even worse. And through all of this, my brother Steve only visited his daughter in hospital once. But he didn't come easily. It literally took me, my husband, and my parents to force him to go. He saw her, patted her head, and then immediately left. And then 3 weeks later, unfortunately, Amy died. So the funeral was 2 weeks later and my brother showed up. And of course, he was high. He was so out of it. Halfway through, he started screaming about how we had taken Amy from him and kept her from him. And even went as far as to say that we were the reason that she'd got sick and that she'd passed away. I get that we're all emotional, but I could not believe that he was this far gone. My dad approached him and tried to calm him down, but he just wasn't letting it go. And at this point, I was sick of my brother getting away with treating people like this. So as my dad was pulling him away, I lost it. Like, what do you mean you're the one that abandoned your daughter? And not even just that, like, he didn't even come and visit her in the hospital while she was dying. I was just so unbelievably hurt in that moment that I just kept going and having a massive go at him. After everything was settled, my mum had a massive go at me and told me that I had ruined the service. And apparently so does most of my family. And my husband just refuses to comment, which I don't know if that makes anything better or worse. So what do you think? Am I wrong here? My boyfriend dumped me the day after he proposed. Too bad I've got the kidney that he needs. Story time. So my boyfriend Steve and I had the perfect relationship, to the point where people said that we were the reason people believed in love at first sight. Before Steve proposed, we had always spoken about the fact that we would probably have a long engagement so that we could save money, and we also wanted to be in a better place financially, career-wise, all that sort of thing. He got into a terrible car accident. It was genuinely awful. A drunk driver hit him head on. This guy was driving the wrong way up the road and just smacked straight into Steve's car. So I obviously ran to the hospital as soon as I heard what had happened. They operated on this man for 12 hours and they said if they hadn't have got to him in time, it wouldn't have saved his life. And when he came out of theatre, the doctors said that he would need a kidney transplant. And I was there with Steve's parents, and we all knew that at least one of us would be able to give him a kidney. We started testing that day to find out who would be the perfect match for Steve. And strangely enough, it came back that I was the better match than his parents. So I was like, great, when am I being cut open? When can my guy have a kidney? They made it very clear that they didn't want to operate straight away. They wanted Steve to build up a bit of strength still. So they confirmed that the operation will be done in 6 months. So let's fast forward a little bit now. Steve got better and he said that the accident made him realise that I was the one. He really wanted to get married, so he proposed. It was great. So the next day I come home from work. I expect to see Steve on the sofa, relaxing, recuperating, because, you know, he did get smashed into by a drunk driver like a couple of months ago. But apparently Steve's got better things to be doing. And at this point, I was really starting to panic. Steve couldn't get around too well on his own still. He needed a lot of support and help. So I'm running around the house stressing, and I decide that it's probably best to call Steve's parents to see if they know where he is. I decided it's probably best to ring his parents, and his mother answered. Sandra, we love her mother-in-law. Tell me for why this woman is screaming at me. Alexandra, please calm your tits, you're going to take someone's eye out. And she proceeds to tell me that Steve doesn't want to speak to me. And at that point, my heart sank. I spent the next few days barely sleeping. I was tossing and turning all night trying to work out what happened. I cared for him whilst he was sick. And let's not forget the fact that I literally offered this man my kidney. Baffling behaviour from Steve. So finally, one day the phone rings. Beep, 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 it's Steve. He goes on to explain that the accident had made him realise that even though he really loves me, he doesn't actually want to spend the rest of his life with me. And the insults started. This man is calling me all sorts of names. He's calling me lazy, unattractive, unhygienic. And then just to add insult to injury, he called me boring. I could not believe what I was hearing. My guy literally wanted to marry me yesterday, so what's happened? He also then asked if we could still be friends, which, like, no. And then the line dropped. He asked if it would still be okay to borrow my kidney. Call me old-fashioned, but no ring. No kidney. And that has only told me that his family had already told him about the fact that they weren't a good match and I was really the only good match for him, both in life and in kidney. But I just flat out told him no. I will not be donating my kidney to you, Steve, sorry. And at that point he started crying. And before I could hear any more of the sob story, I hung up on him. So what do you think? Am I the arsehole?
I'm getting married in 2 weeks and I am totally screwed. I literally need to get this off my chest. I feel like I am going insane. My fiance, Sarah, 28 female, and me, 34 male, have known each other for about 6 years, engaged for 1. Our wedding is scheduled to take place in just 2 weeks, and I just witnessed something that is making me feel like I am making the biggest mistake in my life. Tonight, Sarah and I were taking a rare opportunity to relax at home. Sarah was in the kitchen making dinner while I was out back working on one of my projects. We live on an acreage, and I'm building a fire pit in the backyard that we were planning on using this fall. Anyway, as you do when you're doing heavy labor, I get thirsty and come back to the house to get a drink, where I see Sarah at the counter preparing dinner and talking on speakerphone. I recognize the voice instantly as my brother-in-law Marty. Now this is where my brain gets totally twisted. Marty asks Sarah where his sister Evelyn is, as he's been trying to get in contact with her. She's not answering texts, and I hear Sarah say to him, "She just left here. She should be home in a half hour or so." It should be noted that Evelyn is Marty's wife of 5 years. I have to admit that I didn't immediately register what she had just said, because I went into the kitchen and grabbed a glass and asked Sarah, "What was that all about?" And she responds with, "Marty was looking for Evie." I see her texting and I ask her, "What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm texting Evie that Marty was looking for her." Anyway, I pour myself a drink, sit down, have a sip, and finally my brain starts to work. First off, I heard Sarah tell Marty that Evelyn was here. Evelyn was not here. And the last time we saw her was yesterday, when she would come over to work on some last-minute wedding decoration stuff with Sarah. Secondly, why is she texting Evelyn and expecting a response when I distinctly heard Marty say that Evelyn wasn't answering her text? Lastly, why the hell would she tell Marty that Evelyn should be back in 30 minutes unless she either knows where she is, then why did she lie, or she is, right now, in front of me, texting her to tell her to get her butt home quickly? The only conclusion that I can come up with is that Sarah is lying to Marty about the whereabouts of her sister, Marty's wife, and is probably warning Evie that Marty will expect her home in a half an hour. I then spent probably the next 5 hours concocting various explanations for this behavior, some decent, some downright horrible, and playing them back in my head. I wanted really badly to ask Sarah about this, but at the same time, if what I think is really going on, then I doubted I'd get a straight answer. Which brings me to about a half hour ago. I woke up around 1 a.m. to use the toilet, and I couldn't resist the urge to check Sarah's phone. We both know each other's pins, so this wasn't a difficult thing to do. Anyway, I grabbed the phone, retreated to the bathroom, and unlocked it, and yep, it was exactly what I was afraid of, and probably what most of you were expecting. Sarah's sister Evelyn has been having an affair for about 6 months with a coworker, and Sarah has been helping Evelyn to cover it up for almost the entire time. There are literally hundreds of texts between them discussing it, discussing the coworker, discussing stuff, really embarrassing things about my brother-in-law, and probably uncharitable. Just stuff that makes my stomach churn, and here is my soon-to-be wife going along with all of it without batting an eye. I took some screenshots of the entire thread, put the phone back where I found it, and then retreated to my home office to find myself here typing it all out on Reddit, simply so I can avoid the primal scream that wants to come out of my mouth right now. I am totally 100% screwed. I cannot marry Sarah. I just cannot do it. I can't think of any reasonable excuse she could offer me about assisting her sister in this affair and victimizing not only Marty, but their 2-year-old daughter as well. On the other hand, myself, my family, Sarah, and her family have all sunk an enormous amount of money into a wedding that is supposed to happen in around 2 weeks. There is no way we are getting any of that money back. On top of that, I feel like an absolute fool. Like, how did I not know this woman was like this? And what the hell am I going to do? I can't marry her. I absolutely cannot. However, I still want to. She's beautiful and fun and kind, and I thought we had a bright future ahead of us. She's never done anything wrong to me, but I just can't see her the same now. It's like a big black stain on an otherwise beautiful picture.